Brinksmanship and its origins. Brinksmanship is a foreign policy strategy that involves one party through psychological and political maneuvers to cause a situation where the opposing party reaches the point of conflict, therefore obtaining an advantageous bargaining position over them. Aggressive risk-taking policy choices to win at any cost have been the hallmarks of the method. Although the practice of brinksmanship has most likely existed since the dawn of time, the term derives from a 1956 Life magazine interview with former U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, who stated that in diplomacy, the ability to get to the verge without getting into the war is the necessary art. If you are scared to go to the brink, you are lost. In reaction, Adele Stevenson, an American politician and diplomat, slammed Dulles' brinksmanship as dangerous. The best example of brinksmanship would be the Cold War. Brinksmanship was a term that was constantly used during the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union. An example of the policy of brinksmanship was in 1962 when the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. This really brought the Soviet Union and the United States to a nuclear war. The United States responded by putting a naval blockade around Cuba, and the Soviets removed the missiles from Cuba. The policy brinksmanship scared many people during the Cold War because these two powerhouse nations came close to a nuclear war several times. Brinksmanship was used throughout the Cold War as a foreign policy. This is now referred to as the Cuban Missile Crisis. By stationing medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles in Cuba, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev intended to defend Cuba from the United States, while also strengthening Soviet strategic power in the region. Instead of gaining leverage over the United States, Khrushchev brinksmanship nearly resulted in a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. The crisis was resolved when U.S. President John F. Kennedy revealed Khrushchev's weaponry and ordered a naval quarantine or embargo of Cuba, forcing the Soviet Union to withdraw its missiles. What's detente and its origins? Detente is the name of the given period of improved relations between the United States and the Soviet Union that began tentatively in 1971 and took decisive form when President Richard M. Nixon visited the Soviet Communist Party Leonid Brezhnev in Moscow in May 1972. Both countries stood to gain if trade could be increased and the danger of nuclear warfare reduced. Example of detente would be when Nixon became the first U.S. president to visit Moscow on May 22nd, May 1972. He and Brezhnev signed 7 agreements covering the prevention of unintentional military confrontations, weapons control as advocated by the recent Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT I. Cooperation in research in various sectors, including space exploration and expanding trade. Later that summer, Congress ratified the SALT Pact and a 3-year agreement on grain sales to the Soviets. Brezhnev visited the United States in June 1973 for Summit 2, which introduced a few new arrangements but symbolized the two governments' enduring commitment to peace. Summit 3 in June 1974 was the least fruitful by then. SALT talks had been stalled, several economic treaties had been blocked in Congress due to the Soviet treatment to Jews, and the Watergate investigation was nearing its conclusion. Detente resulted in formal agreements on arms control and European security. The ratification of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1968 was a clear indication that detente was brewing. Then in 1972, the first round of strategic limitations talks resulted in the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty and an interim agreement limiting the number of intercontinental ballistic missiles that each side might develop. In 1975, at the mid-decade mark, the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe emerged from 2 years of intense negotiations to sign the Helsinki Final Act, which recognized political borders, established military confidence building measures, and created opportunities for trade, while also improving cultural exchange and improved human rights. From brinksmanship to detente. In a strong reaction to the Soviet Union of Afghanistan in December 1971, the Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan. President Jimmy Carter demanded that the Soviet Senate delay action to SALT II, a nuclear weapon treaty, and recalled the U.S. ambassador to Moscow on New Year's Day, 1980. In response to the Soviet invasion to Afghanistan, this signaled the end of an era of detente and improving diplomatic and economic relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union under Nixon's administration from 1969 to 1974. Afghanistan's invasion by Soviet troops, in which an estimated 30,000 soldiers took part, worried Carter because it endangers Pakistan, Iran, and other nearby countries, and led to the USSR assuming control of significant percentage of the world's oil supply. The White House assessed the Soviet threat as severe to show that any possible military participation in Afghanistan was unacceptable. The president called U.S. Ambassador to Moscow, Thomas J. Watson, back to Washington for consultation to let the Kremlin know that the military intervention in Afghanistan was unacceptable.